outdoor cinema exhibition remains dramatically understudied as of today, which is a pity because I see that's a particularly fertile framework for social and political histories of film. Places of non-theatrical film exhibition offers a chance to first move away from centralizing narratives and what Robert C. Allen calls Gotham-centrist discourses on cinema history, and secondly, achieve deeper understanding of the multiplicity of dimensions that form the filmic experience, that is, the aesthetic experience of tone, of a film text, but also the experience of a space that is weirdly private and public at the same time, and other extra filmic, visual, oral, olfactory, gustatory, and haptic experiences of moviegoing. According to Lee here, that's what I think is a beautiful metaphor, hot noise. As I mentioned, open-air film exhibition venues, known in Spain as cines de verano, summer cinemas, have been a peripheral yet persistent alternative of form of film consumption for decades in Spain, especially in the Mediterranean coast, where I'm from. And after studying them for a while, I feel the role they play today might be that of just another option, perhaps one especially nostalgia-driven and picturesque, so to say, in a broader market of film exhibition dominated mostly by megaplexes. However, while looking at the places of sites of filmic experience in Spain's former colonies, I couldn't help but start to see them too as this kind of capitalist realism illusion of alternative, so to say, among the homogenizing and disciplinary politics of megaplexes in a way. So I thought there has to be more different social histories of film, of Spanish film, to these kind of places that their contemporary nostalgic consumerist incarnations might not be telling. So open-air cinema exhibition was a key component in the cultural life of former Spanish colonies in Africa, and is also crucial for some post/anti-colonial cinematic strategies carried out in some of those territory states. So I set out to establish a dialogue with these ontology, with an H of sorts, with this whole part of the history of these summer cinemas, of these things that I don't know, that seems to be missing, which is at the same time a missing part in the official history of Spanish colonial violence. And that will take us to the case of Equatorial Guinea. I'd like us to focus on this territory specifically for the limited size of its exhibition market back then during colonial domination, the particular importance of outdoor screening venues within that, and for how it presents singular challenges when it comes to kind of trying to apprehend the history of cinema going in those Spanish colonies in terms of evidence available. Because empirical work on the cinema exhibition industry at a regional, province, or colony level is not without difficulties. Equatorial Guinea has just vanished from the main sources of statistical data, such as the Sindicato Nacional de Espectáculos statistical reports, despite having been administratively related to Spain in one form or another from circa 1900 to 1968. And I've been taking these and these documents, and there's only one of these that accounts for new movie theaters in Equatorial Guinea. You can see it's even in the maps. Yeah, and this report that I found indeed accounts for movie theaters in the Morocco Protectorate, in Sidi Ifni, and 3 venues in Guinea. Cinema Ocandon in Mbata, that's continental Guinea, and Jardín en Marfil in former Santa Isabel, now Malabo on Bioko Island. But the document, as you can see, you can't see actually. This column is supposed to be conventional cinema theaters, like theaters with a roof, and this column is supposed to be cinema, summer cinemas, or opener. Okay. So, yeah, the document says none of them, nor any of the 31 colonial venues by that moment were open-air cinema theaters. So, and we know from other sources that that might not be true. So maybe they change their shape as a site of exhibition over the years, or maybe the author of the report is counting them as conventional theaters when they weren't, or maybe the criteria for summer cinemas in this specific report is the season in which they operate and not the fact of having a roof or not. So there are some, I think this is an example of that there are some difficulties inherent to the size of non-theatrical exhibition as an object of study. And taking a little, those are the cinema venues in Bataan, so taking a little detour, I want us to look at Spanish official colonial archive as they do in Anunciaron Tormenta, a 2020 film by Javier Fernández Vázquez, who is a member of the experimental filmmaking collective Los Hijos, and you might know better a second member of this group, Luis López Carrasco. And in the film, which is kind of an important reference in Spanish post-colonial documentary work, the archive appears in the sense of Derrida not only as an accumulation of archival material in the abstract, but as a place, as the place of archontic power. And I think this approach is very illustrative of the main obstacles that official history, even if strictly speaking is made available to the public, poses to decolonizing efforts. The colonial archive as a techno-social device whose mediation still echoes in the production of colonial histories and identities today. In other words, the archive as this very tiny warehouse that is at the same time a labyrinth and the messiest of libraries, structured and disordered all at once. So given this situation, academic literature on the topic tends to resort to unofficial historical accounts, sometimes first-hand, sometimes second-hand, sometimes even works of fiction, and mostly of Spanish rather than Guinean authors. Alberto Elena, a pioneer in the study of world cinema's colonial film policy and in Spanish academia at least, who sadly passed away a few years ago, tried to reconstruct this shape of movie theaters in Equatorial Guinea based on some of these novels and chronicles and news pieces by Vila or Villarro and other authors. And they picture the space of the theater in Equatorial Guinea as enforcing the Spanish colonial project onto cinema audiences. To sum it up, pricier seats under a roof for the colonizers, benches out in the open for Guinean audiences. And I'll totally translate that into this. There's different versions on whether this separation was mandatory or not, but it was effective de facto in any case. For some, as I said, it was just a matter of economic criteria. But we'll agree that these economic criteria cannot be abstracted from the broad colonial structures of Guinean society. And then Arnaldos Fernández Figueres did something similar and found, of course, plenty of fetishizing narratives about the Guinean audience and their consumption of film in these sites. Like this one of Javier Rivera, a Spanish writer, who is as bold as to establish causality between screenings of Rambo in African venues and child soldiers in Liberia or Sierra Leone. And another writer, Francisco Zamora, talks about Guinean delinquents borrowing the aesthetics of American Western films and says, esa es la vertiente social del cine. That's the social dimension of cinema. But is it though? At least I think these arguments serve as a reminder of two vital points in this review of the fabric of filmic experience in the Spanish colonial context that I'm trying here. I think it's crucial first to counter-argue that, contrary to the case of, let's say, Belgium, Spain's colonial cinematic policy was just a bit of a mess. The institutions never really had a plan, so to say. And secondly, I think it's important to try and frame filmic experience as something much more complex, with the main interest of it being the means for the production of plays, the creation of social sites. So this, if any, I think would be the social dimension of cinema, or at least a range of multiple social dimensions, to be fair. And in search of that, I thought it was useful to look at accounts of different nature as this local post-colonial work of memory. It is called Marfil, a short documentary film by Rubén Monsuri and on movie theaters disappearing from Equatorial Guinea, like around the 90s. And it includes interviews with former Guinean moviegoers that remember the experience of watching films in these openers in venues for the camera. But it has its problems too, because in the interview with this first character who lived during Spanish colonialism in Guinea, he remembers that the first movie theater in Guinea was called Cine Paralela, and actually working with, sorry for the fascist symbology here, but working with colonial Equatorial Guinea newspapers like this, and with the archive, I kind of was able to check that this is not exactly correct. Because again, the official archive is not, it's easy for getting to know the conditions of film experience in Equatorial Guinea, but first-hand, second-hand memories have their problems too, and there's this second character that says that theaters appeared in Equatorial Guinea in the 1968 or 69, and that's not correct at all either. So there's always this question that memory, especially in these post-colonial efforts, it's important, but it's also valuable. So there's that too. But I think what's most valuable in this document is their argument for open-air cinemas as places that allow site-specific forms of social relations to emerge. There's a little hint of a former movie theater, open-air movie theater in Malawi. So a history of film exhibition and consumption in Spain that is capable of identifying the role played by open-air screenings in the cultural structure of the colonial project in certain African territories, I think should also be able to recognize those same practices reconfigured and repurposed in post/anti-colonial context. And as an example of the latter, I propose Pisahara, the human rights themed film festival that takes place every year in the refugee camps in the Algerian Sahara, with screenings out in the desert. And I think in our line of reasoning, this definitely invites us to locate film exhibition and its sites within this collaboration actually between the festival and an initiative called Solar Cinema, which is a travel cinema project. I would say, yeah, this definitely invites us to locate film exhibition and its sites within the Sahrawi project of identity and of state building. Against this backdrop, actually the whole of Sahrawi cinema appears as a concept that is necessarily an inclusive one, as Chris Lippard says, appropriate to stateless people, thus embracing not only a set of film texts made in or about the territory, but a wider use of media circulation and consumption as part of the author says, virtual battlefield. A very special case in the global flows of people, capital, images, and cultures around cinema. I think this festival engages in a particular manner in the usual relationships between festivals and tourism, for example, being both of them about decades, so to say. And that a tourist gaze is that is accustomed to little or no interaction or interest in interaction with the destination, and that, says Lippard, is what Visahara's structure and practices of exhibition are designed to disrupt in a way. Some authors have referred to the festival's gathering of people around a certain way of screening films as an imagined community that ultimately belongs to none of its participants, in a twist of Benedict Anderson's terms. So it's, or to use Rivera's terms after Rivera, it's not so much about final escapes, it is about need escapes and id escapes interacting. Or in other words, more of a social landscape, I would say, and I will finish by arguing that obviously takes shape in space and which invites us to look at this particular shape of another sites for film exhibition as a privileged framework for pondering the place of cinema within the Spanish colonial project in Africa and different post/anti-colonial cinematic projects stemming from that history of colonial domination. Because the legacies of imperial ways of life and its links with cinema as a cultural phenomenon, but as an economy, but as an industry, modernity with an capital M, all these exceed by far the limited chronology of Spain's history of colonialism. So I think a decolonizing history of Spanish cinema, and therefore of Spanish and Spanish colonial cinema going, cannot but accept that invitation to approach film exhibition and the places for film exhibition, both historically and today, as James said earlier this morning, as embedded within a wider ecology of coloniality. So that will be all from me. Thank you very much for listening. My details are over there if you're interested in slides or sharing references or whatever. Thank you.